the map that wasn't meant to be found. When Ayaan turned 14, he didn't expect his birthday to be quiet. No big party, no loud surprises, just cake, his parents, and a small wrapped box from his grandfather, a man who loved puzzles more than conversations. "Open it later," Grandpa said with a wink. "When you're bored." That was suspicious already. That night, Ayaan sat on his bed and opened the box. Inside was a folded, yellowed piece of paper. "That's it," he muttered. But when he unfolded it, he froze. It wasn't just paper. It was a map. Not a printed one. It was hand-drawn. Messy lines. Tiny notes written in pencil. Symbols he didn't understand. At the bottom were 3 words: "Don't rush. Observe." Ayaan felt a strange excitement. This wasn't a game. This was a challenge. And Grandpa never did anything without a reason. The first marking on the map pointed somewhere inside Ayaan's own house. "That's weird," he said. He followed the drawing, past the kitchen, past the staircase, and stopped in front of something he had seen every day of his life. The old bookshelf. He almost laughed. "There's no way." Then he remembered the words: "Don't rush. Observe." So instead of just looking, he examined it carefully. One book was pushed in farther than the others. He pulled it. Click. A small wooden panel popped open. Inside was a note. Ayaan's heart started racing. "If you found this, it means you're curious. Curiosity is the beginning of every adventure and every mistake. Let's see which one this becomes." Below the message was another clue. A riddle this time. Ayaan grinned. This was getting interesting. Over the next few days, Ayaan followed clues all over. A park bench with initials carved underneath. A tiny compass hidden inside a pencil case Grandpa gave him years ago. A message written in invisible ink. A location he passed every day but never truly noticed. Each clue wasn't just about solving something. It was about paying attention. To sounds, to people, to small details. Things he had always ignored before. The last clue led him to Grandpa's workshop. Ayaan walked in slowly. "Okay," he said. "I made it. Now what?" Grandpa looked up from his desk like he had been expecting him all along. "You took longer than I thought," he said. Ayaan blinked. "Wait, you knew." Grandpa laughed. This wasn't about finding treasure. Ayaan looked around. No gold. No secret chest. Then what was it about? Grandpa handed him a mirror. Confused, Ayaan looked into it. "I don't get it." Grandpa smiled. "When you started, you rushed through everything. You wanted answers fast. You didn't notice details. You didn't think deeply." He paused. But now, Ayaan thought about the past week. He had slowed down, observed more, thought harder, asked questions, failed, tried again. Grandpa nodded. The map wasn't meant to show you a place. It was meant to change the way you see. The world hadn't changed, but he had. And suddenly, everything felt more interesting. School, people, problems, ideas. Life itself had become the adventure. Before Ayaan left, Grandpa handed him one last note. It read, "Most people wait for something exciting to happen to them. Curious people create excitement by paying attention. Never stop looking closer." Ayaan folded the note carefully. He didn't know what his next adventure would be, but now he knew how to find it. And that made all the difference.
Ayaan thought the adventure was over. He was wrong. A normal week, almost for a few days, life went back to normal. School, homework, football with friends, complaining about math. But something felt different. Ayaan kept noticing things he had never seen before. The security guard at school always read the same old novel during lunch. One classroom clock ticked slightly slower than the others. A cracked tile near the science lab had letters scratched into it. At first, he ignored it. Then, one afternoon, he froze. The scratched letters weren't random. They spelled something. "Look again," Ayaan's stomach flipped. "That's not possible," he whispered. Grandpa, had said the adventure was over. So why did it feel like it had just started, not another game? Right after school, Ayaan rushed to Grandpa's workshop. "You did this," he said, holding a photo of the scratched tile he'd taken. Grandpa didn't even look surprised. "I did nothing," he said calmly. "That message is at school." Grandpa finally looked up, and that means this is another puzzle. Grandpa shook his head. "No Ayaan this time. It's not from me." That was when Ayaan realized something much stranger. If Grandpa didn't make the clues, who did? The second observer. The next day, Ayaan went back to the tile. Now that he was really looking, he noticed more markings nearby, tiny ones. Hidden unless you crouched down, to narrow, pointing toward the library. Inside the library, he searched shelves carefully, remembering everything Grandpa taught him. Don't rush, observe. On the history shelf, one book was upside down. Inside it was a note. But the handwriting wasn't Grandpa's. It was neater, sharper, someone younger. The note said, "You're not the only one who learned to look closer." Ayaan's heart started pounding. Someone else had been following the same lessons. Someone else had changed. The mystery student. For 3 days, the clues continued. Each one led somewhere small. Not secret tunnels. Not hidden treasure rooms. Just ordinary places. The cafeteria notice board. The back of a calculator in math class. A folded message inside a lost and found hoodie, and every note had the same symbol drawn at the bottom. An eye. The confrontation. Finally, one message gave a time and place. After school, rooftop stairs. Come alone. Ayaan climbed the stairs slowly. The door creaked open. Someone was already there. It was Sara, quiet, smart, the girl who always finished assignments early and then just observed everyone. "You," Ayaan said. Sara smiled slightly. "You solved them faster than I expected. You made all this." She nodded. "I saw you searching for clues last week. You looked ridiculous." Ayaan frowned. "Thanks. But also," she continued, "you looked awake. Like you finally noticed the world." "I asked your grandfather what you were doing." Ayaan blinked. "You talked to Grandpa." "He didn't tell me the puzzles," she said. "He just said, if you want to understand, start observing." So I did. A different kind of adventure. They sat on the rooftop steps. No dramatic music. No treasure chest. Just 2 teenagers realizing something important. "There are no more clues, are there?" Ayaan asked. Sara shook her head. "That's the point. We don't need them anymore." Ayaan thought about it. Before, he waited for excitement. Now he could create it. By asking questions. By exploring ideas. By noticing what others ignored. The new plan. Sara pulled out a notebook. On the first page she had written, "Things nobody pays attention to." Below it was a growing list. Why the oldest tree in the park leans sideways. What's inside the locked room near the gym. How the town got its name. Who keeps fixing broken things at school before anyone reports them. Ayaan grinned. This is way better than a treasure hunt. Sara nodded. Real mysteries don't end. Grandpa's smile. That evening, Ayaan told Grandpa everything. Grandpa listened quietly, then smiled. Good, he said. That's it? Ayaan asked. No speech. Grandpa shook his head. You don't need maps anymore. He tapped Ayaan's forehead gently. You know where to look now. And so the adventure changed. There was no final prize, no ending, just questions. And for the first time, Ayaan realized it. The best adventures aren't about finding something hidden, they're about learning how to see what was there all along. To be continued. Because curiosity never really ends.
The Map That Wasn't Meant to Be Found, Part 3, The Story Beneath the City. Ayaan and Sara had officially started what they called the Observation Club. There were no members. No meetings, no rules, just two people determined to ask questions nobody else bothered asking. The first real mystery. One afternoon, while sitting under the oldest tree in the park, the one that leaned sideways like it was tired, Sara opened her notebook. Okay, she said, let's stop practicing and try something real. Ayaan raised an eyebrow. Real how? Sara turned the notebook around. At the top of the page was written, why is there a locked room in the school that no one uses? Ayaan blinked. Oh, that room. Everyone knew about it. It was at the end of the second floor hallway. Always locked, always ignored. Teachers would just say, storage, but no one had ever seen anything stored there. The clue nobody meant to leave. They started small. Observation first, questions later. They watched who walked past the door. When it was cleaned, whether anyone ever unlocked it. 3 days passed, nothing. Then on Thursday, Ayaan noticed something strange. The lock is scratched, he whispered. Sara leaned closer. It wasn't damage. It was writing tiny, faint, almost rubbed away, a date. 1987, that's not random, Sara said. That's when the school was expanded. So this room is older than the rest. Ayaan asked. Now they had a reason to dig deeper. Research instead of guessing, instead of sneaking in or doing something reckless. They did something harder. They went to the library. Old newspapers, old photos, old building plans. At first it was boring. Then Sara found something. Ayaan, look. It was a black and white photo of the school, but it looked different, smaller, and in the exact place where the locked room was now, there used to be a staircase. The disappearing staircase. They found more records. The staircase once led to a small rooftop observatory used by students for astronomy. Ayaan stared at the article. Students built this themselves. Sara nodded. It says they used to track stars, write journals, and even discover a minor comet, so why remove it? They searched for hours. Finally, they found a short note in an old newsletter. The observatory will be closed after structural concerns. Materials preserved. That's it, Ayaan said, no explanation. Sara leaned back. Looks like people just forgot the decision. The next day, they went to the principal. Not to accuse, not to demand, just to share what they found. At first, the principal looked confused, then curious, then surprised. You're telling me, she said slowly, we have part of our school's history locked behind that door, and no one remembers. Ayaan and Sara exchanged a look. That's what happens, Sara said, when people stop paying attention. Opening the door, a week later, something incredible happened. The door was unlocked. Teachers, students, and staff gathered as it creaked open for the first time in decades. Inside was dust, old desks, star charts, handmade telescopes, and on one wall, written by students long ago, we learn more when we look up. Ayaan felt chills. They hadn't just solved a mystery. They had brought something back, a living adventure. The school decided to restore the observatory as a student project. Now, instead of being forgotten, it would belong to a new generation. The Observation Club finally got more members. Not because Ayaan and Sara recruited them. Because curiosity spreads. Grandpa's reaction. When Ayaan told Grandpa, he didn't say well done, he simply asked, so, what are you looking at next? Ayaan smiled. The world was full of unanswered questions. And now he knew something important. Mysteries don't disappear. People just stop noticing them. End of part 3, but not the end of their story.
The observatory was finally open. After weeks of cleaning, repairing, and carefully restoring the old equipment, the small rooftop room was alive again. Students painted the walls, fixed the windows, and even rebuilt one of the telescopes using the original design. But tonight was different. Tonight would be the first real observation night in nearly 40 years. Ayaan adjusted the telescope nervously. "I feel like we're about to discover something huge," he said. Sara rolled her eyes. "We're probably going to discover clouds," but she was smiling. Around them, a few teachers and students whispered excitedly. The sky above was clear, darker than usual, filled with stars most people never noticed because they were too busy looking at their phones. Grandpa stood quietly near the doorway, saying nothing, just watching. While waiting, Sara found a box tucked beneath one of the desks. Inside were notebooks, dozens of them. Observation journals from the students of 1987. Ayaan carefully opened one. Every page was filled with sketches of constellations, notes about star movement, and questions written in messy handwriting like, "Why does this star flicker differently? Could there be something we don't understand yet?" Then, near the back of one journal, Sara found a page that didn't look finished. At the top was written, "Strange repeating signal appears every 19 years, Ayaan frowned. "Signal? What signal?" Below it was a rough star map and a calculation. The last line read, "Next appearance should be..." Sara grabbed her calculator. She punched in the numbers. Her eyes widened. "Ayaan? What?" She turned the screen toward him. "It's tonight." At first, nothing seemed unusual. Stars shimmered normally. The air was still, then Ayaan noticed it. "That one," he whispered. "Why does it look like it's blinking?" It wasn't like an airplane. It wasn't random. It pulsed, slow, steady, predictable. Sara flipped through the old journal again. "They saw this too," she said. But they never figured out what it was. The two of them quickly began recording everything: brightness, timing, position, just like the students had done decades earlier. Except now they had better tools and fresh eyes. After an hour of observation, one of the science teachers joined them. He studied their notes, then looked through the telescope again, and suddenly laughed. Not because it was silly, because it was beautiful. "You didn't discover something unknown," he said. "You rediscovered something forgotten." He explained that the pulsing object was a rare type of variable star, one that brightens and dims in a long, predictable cycle. The reason it appeared every 19 years was because that's when it became visible enough from their location to study clearly. The students in 1987 had almost identified it, but they ran out of time when the observatory closed. Sara looked back at the journal. "They left the work unfinished." Ayaan nodded. "So we finish it." For the next few hours, they carefully documented everything, completing the research that another group of students had begun nearly 40 years ago. Different generation. Same curiosity, same sky. As everyone packed up, Grandpa stepped beside Ayaan. "You see now?" he asked. Ayaan looked up at the stars. "This was never about puzzles," he said slowly. Grandpa nodded. "Puzzles end. Curiosity doesn't." He gestured toward the observatory, now full of life again. "You didn't just solve clues, you connected past, present, and future just by paying attention." The map Grandpa gave him had led to this moment, not to treasure, not to answers, but to a way of thinking that would keep leading him forward, again and again. Sara closed her notebook and added one last line. "Some discoveries take decades. That doesn't make them late, it makes them timeless." Above them, the star continued its slow, steady pulse, waiting, just like it always had.
The observatory was no longer a forgotten room. It had become the most interesting place in the entire school. Students who once rushed home now stayed after class. Some came to look through the telescope. Others came just to ask questions. And at the center of it all were Ayaan and Sara, not as leaders, but as guides. One afternoon, a group of younger students walked in. "What? Is this where you discovered the star?" one of them asked. Sara smiled. "We didn't discover it, we just noticed it," Ayaan added. "Big difference." The students looked confused. So Ayaan handed one of them a notebook. "Start writing," he said. "Anything you notice. Doesn't have to be important." The student hesitated. "What if it's wrong?" Sara shook her head. "Curiosity can't be wrong." They created something new inside the observatory, a large board labeled "Questions We Don't Know the Answers to Yet." Within days, it filled up. Why do some stars look red and others white? How far can we actually see into space? Who built the original telescope? What else has been forgotten? One question, written in small handwriting, caught Ayaan's attention. Who started all this? He smiled. That evening, Ayaan visited Grandpa again. They sat together quietly, watching the sunset. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" Ayaan asked. Grandpa chuckled. "I hoped. That's different." "Why did you give me the map?" Grandpa thought for a moment before answering. "Because someone once gave me one." Ayaan looked surprised. "You mean yes," Grandpa said. "When I was your age, someone taught me to look closer to there was no treasure then either." He handed Ayaan something small. It was the same compass Ayaan had found during the first clues. "It's yours now," Grandpa said, "not to follow directions, but to remind you to keep searching." The next week, Ayaan slipped a folded piece of paper into one of the notebooks used by the younger students. Inside was a simple message: "Don't rush, observe." He didn't sign it. He didn't need to. Because this time, it wasn't about who made the map. It was about who would follow it next. The observatory lights glowed late into the evening. Students laughed, argued, wondered. Somewhere another mystery was already beginning, not hidden, not secret, just waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Ayaan once believed adventures were things you found. Now he understood the truth. Adventures are things you create every time you choose to ask, to look closer, and to never stop wondering. The end, and also the beginning.